His name is Dr. George Diaz, and he works in the infectious disease department at Providence Medical Group in Everett, Washington. Facing a brand new virus, he told us the hospital relied on its preparation for highly contagious diseases like Ebola and the use of a robot.
It's a telehealth robot, which is basically a screen, a camera, and then the ability to Bluetooth a stethoscope and other things into it so that we could do a remote exam. The nurses were the ones taking care of the patient, and when we needed to interact with the patient, meaning providers, we could log on to the telehealth service, and the nurses would move the robot to the patient so we could talk to the patient, interact with them, take a history, and perform an exam. And this allowed us to avoid many folks having to go into the room and potentially cause an exposure.
Tell us about the treatment decisions you made for this patient.
The day before he became ill, we saw a publication out of the Lancet where they reviewed 40 patients that had coronavirus and were in the hospital in China, and about 40% of them required admission to the ICU, and about a quarter of them developed respiratory failure from the infection. So we reviewed this with the patient at the time, informing him that there was a possibility that he could get worse. We had been working closely at that time with the CDC, and they were aware of an experimental medication called remdesivir, which had been used in animal models for the treatment of coronaviruses. It appeared to have quite a bit of activity against the virus. It had not been used on any patient for novel coronavirus before, and so we applied to the FDA for compassionate use of this medication. And fortunately, the FDA was able to expedite our application, and the manufacturer, Gilead, was able to provide us a medication within 24 hours of us requesting it. So the next day, we started his treatment. At that time, he was still quite febrile and requiring oxygen. After 24 hours of treatment, he dramatically improved. His fevers went away, and he generally felt much better. He was also able to come off of oxygen and remained so the rest of the time he was in the hospital. So the patient felt that he had improved after treatment, and we felt the same.
Wow. How much can really be determined about whether it was the drug that helped him? That's
a really good point. This is an N of 1, and obviously what we need are randomized controlled studies to really get a better sense of whether or not this medication is actually effective. There have been 2 clinical trials that have been started over the past week looking at using this agent in patients in China who have either severe disease, pulmonary disease, or mild to moderate disease. And so they're currently in the process of enrolling patients. And hopefully within a few months we'll have data from that study to inform us as to whether or not this is truly an effective treatment for patients with coronavirus.
How long did this disease really take to kind of, if you could say, run its course for this patient at least?
He began becoming ill around the 16th of January, and it took about 2 weeks before we felt that the worst had passed.
So that drug that Dr. Diaz mentioned started clinical trials this week. That's as the WHO holds a 2-day meeting to prioritize research into medicines, vaccines, and therapeutics. So the scientific community, Contessa, moving as quickly as it can.
Really fascinating. Meg, thank you very much.